Welcome to the pod focusing on the aftermath and recovery from the devastating Palisades fires of January 2025. Journalist Joel Pollack, entrepreneur Oren Ezra, and technology expert Ron Goldschmidt serve up to the moment vital news and information, discuss the ongoing recovery efforts, and introduce us to the individuals and trades who are playing key roles in rebuilding our cherished communities. We're diving into the deep end and learning quickly how we can move forward together. We know the pain because we're living real-time news, stories, resources, and insights on the ongoing recovery effort. Buckle up. We're three homeless guys.
Welcome to Three Homeless Guys, the podcast about the Palisades fire and the rebuilding effort. I'm journalist Joel Pollack here with technology expert Ron Goldschmidt and entrepreneur Oren Ezra. And we have a very special guest this evening, Jacqueline Chernov, a real estate agent. She's actually been my real estate agent for many years, and she has helped many people in the Pacific Palisades and beyond. She's also a homeowner and a property owner who lost, Jacqueline, two homes, right? One of them you were living in and the other one you were renting out.
Yeah, two homes. The one I was renting out was a family home I had for over 20 years in the Alphabet Streets. And then I bought a beautiful home across the street in the Huntington a few years ago that we were living in. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we'll get into that and your career and some of the ups and downs of real estate. But our focus this evening is going to be not just real estate, but really the kinds of decisions that people are making, the juncture that many of us have arrived at where we have to make really important financial decisions, personal decisions, career decisions. And I think we can have a very honest discussion about the kind of things that people are facing and the very tough choices, I think, that are facing many Palisades families, whether renters or homeowners. But let me start with a little bit of news. In my mind, the most interesting news this evening is, as we speak on Monday, April 28th, that the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives is going to set fires in the Pacific Palisades. They're going to do a controlled burn experiment from Tuesday through Thursday to try to determine what caused the Palisades fire. And so they're actually going to go up to where they think the fire started, and they're going to set fires. I don't know that there's anything to burn up there, so I don't know how this works, if they have to bring something flammable, because I've actually been to some of those areas. You're not really supposed to go up to the ridge line and to the mountains, but a friend of mine and I went up there, and there's nothing to burn. So I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of ground cover now, like a little bit, some green shoots, but I don't know what they're going to do. And I'm a little bit disappointed by the news because it does suggest to me that they don't really know what caused the fire yet, or they're not really making much progress. And I've been calling the ATF frequently and trying to get them to tell me about the progress of their investigation. They've been very polite in returning my calls, but also very tight-lipped about what's going on. So that to me is at least a little bit strange. And then the other interesting piece of news is that the mayor promised in her State of the City to get the city council to vote on waiving permit fees. And I think there may be some opposition in the city council. It hasn't happened yet, but it's possible that that could happen. But I think now she's issued an emergency order. I could be wrong, so I stand to be corrected. I think she's just ordered city officials not to collect the permitting fees. So that's good if that sticks around. I don't know if it will. But I don't know what you guys are hearing about that, or if you have any other news. Ron or Oren, if you want to jump in, go ahead.
No, so I didn't get any news. The only thing, again, is for us to start understanding how long will permitting take. We're trying to start figuring out what are the red tapes, like the debris red tape that we went through. I'm trying to figure out what are the next red tapes. Is it going to be connecting to power? Is it going to be the time it's going to take us to get permits? Those are the things, and I think that those are the things that are most important for us to start talking in the podcast and hear from our audience. If they started the process, if people started the process of pulling permits, how is it going? If people under HOAs like Sunset Mesa, I know that there is a lot of debate about the garage conversion into ADU and things like this, that there is more and more talk. In general, I don't know how HOA is going to treat the views and the blocking of the views. All of these are things I think that are starting to unfold, and we're starting to see that there is not a lot of solution for them. So honestly, for me, in the meantime, again, everywhere we look at is a lot of unknown factors. I know that a lot of people are talking about, hey, this is the quickest that the lots have been cleared. We're doing the quickest progress, but still, it's like I don't know, 7, 8,000 houses that need to be rebuilt in the Palisade, and I'm just taking the Palisade now. I don't know like how we're going to do it in a matter of few years, and I think it will be interesting to hear from you under after that, Jacqueline, like what you see is people are like what you get from the people on the field over there. Like people are excited, building, people are selling, people are buying. What's happening?
Well, let's bring Jacqueline in. It's good opportunity. So Jacqueline, tell us a little bit about yourself and your agency and everything. How you came to the Palisades, how you fell in love with the Palisades, and you had tremendous success here as a real estate agent before everything burnt down, basically. But tell us your story, and then I'll share some of our story together, which I think will be interesting to people.
I came to the Palisades in 97 and I moved to the Highlands actually from New York City. So I moved to the Highlands and then I ended up getting my real estate license in 2003 and I moved down to the Alphabet Streets and bought my first house down there. I started with Coldwell Banker and since then I've been with my goodness, Berkshire Hathaway and the agency and the latest. I was with Compass for many years, and I just switched over to Beverly Hills Estates actually with Rainey and Brandon, and they're based out of West Hollywood, and we're in talks right now about. I'm going to be starting a division. Actually, we haven't launched it yet. Over calling it Palisades Estates. So we're about to do that in the next week or two. So I went over there because they needed presence over in the Palisades, and I'm going to kind of bring that to them and eventually get some office spaces and help with the rebuild over on this side of town. I guess the pivoting part of my career was I started with builders. I did my first development deal maybe over 10 years ago. I had a tear down in Castle Mare and a builder came in and he became my friend. He bought it and he then had me sell him another piece of property in the Alphabet Streets and he built a new house that I sold, and by doing that I then met other builders. And then I met other builders. And this one builder who's still a good friend of mine named Guy, he said, you need 10 people just like me. And then you're going to have a great career. And he was right. I started getting in the building community and it made real estate really exciting for me. I learned architecture and I learned plans and I learned about all the different rules and the neat things you can get with the new construction. And I really, started enjoying that part of the business. And it kind of took off from there. And now it's really helping me because I'm understanding. I say now I'm a lot salesman. I mean, I'm having to help people, and I'm understanding about the permitting process and setbacks, and architecture, and I'm just trying to be a resource to the community of however I can to try to get everything built back fast. And having the knowledge of new construction, especially now, is like really important.
Well, let me share a little bit of my story with you. So I don't remember how we met exactly. Do you remember who introduced us?
I do. Yeah.
Who was it?
I met your wife at Stroller Strides when I had my son who's 15 and he was 1 year old, and you had your first child. And I met Julia at this class at the Bluffs in Santa Monica where you would exercise and have your baby in the stroller. And we started chatting, and she said, well, actually, I'm looking for a condo in Santa Monica. And I ended up selling you all your condo in Santa Monica, and we became family friends, and you
Well,
invite me to all your holidays.
well, what's interesting about that is, so we at the time were living in a one-bedroom apartment. I think the rent was $2,000 a month in Santa Monica. This was 2011, 2012. And you met Julia, and we told you that we were looking to buy a place eventually. And you came to our house and or our apartment, and we moved down the hall to a two-bedroom apartment when we had two kids. And that family actually just coincidentally moved to the Palisades. They had been there for 20 years. They raised three kids in a two-bedroom apartment. Don't ask me how they did it. And then they moved to the Palisades. And actually, we turned out to live on the same street eventually. But you would come to our apartment for the Jewish holidays and so forth. And you were our friend, and you stuck with us for 3 or 4 years before we actually found anything, which I thought was kind of amazing, because I think that most real estate agents would, for business purposes, want to develop a client relationship when the client's going to buy something or sell something pretty soon. But you developed a relationship with us that was very long term, and you showed us things when they came up and we couldn't afford it or we didn't like it or whatever it was. And then this condo came up in Santa Monica, not too far away from where we were living. And you said, this is going on the market tomorrow. I think it had been on the market earlier. They took it off. You said, this is going on tomorrow, but let's get you in there today to see it. And we saw it, and I absolutely hated it. but my wife said, this is the only shot we've got to get into this property market. And it was heartbreaking for me, because I was so keen on retiring all of my debt, and I had just gotten to zero. And now here's my wife telling me, now we have to take out a loan to buy this condo. But we did, and it ended up being a fantastic investment, because it was one of the only 4-bedroom condos in Santa Monica. So it appreciated very rapidly over the 5 years that we were there. And so when we sold it at the end of 2019, we were able to take the money we had made and to use that toward our house in the Pacific Palisades. We had been involved in the Palisades for a long time because our daughter had gone to daycare at the Chabad. So we were in Pacific Palisades all the time. We knew the community very well. And I had actually wanted to stay in Santa Monica, but my experience looking for real estate in Santa Monica was there wasn't any. There were no middle-class homes in Santa Monica that you could really afford. And if they came onto the market, then basically you had these all-cash buyers showing up and just putting cash down, and that was the end of the story. Ordinary families just couldn't make it in that market. But Palisades was actually more affordable, and there was more housing stock. So I said, okay, we'll move to the Palisades. And as soon as you showed this house on Bollinger and Marquez to Julia, I said to Julia, well, I don't know how we're going to afford it, but I know you want it, so just do it. And you worked it out, and you introduced us to the lenders, and you say you have experience in building, but I think your experience is really in deal making, because you're always the one who pulls all these deals together. You're the one who figures out how to make a transaction work. And you knew someone who needed to sell, and you knew us, we wanted to buy, and you knew the person who could lend us at a favorable rate, and you just made it happen. So that's been part of our relationship as well, not just our friendship and how our families have gotten to know each other, but you really stick with the client until the client gets what they need. And I think that's just really admirable in any business, but especially in real estate.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, I don't, no's not in my vocabulary. It really isn't. I'm pretty creative, and I do try to put people together, and I always think there's a way to make a deal happen. So thanks for saying that.
So this has been hard for you, because I know how many projects you were involved with. I think you sold a massive home in Palisades just about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago. I think it was like the most expensive home in Palisades at the time you sold it, and you were involved in everything. And then all of a sudden you're sleeping on friends' couches, and you don't have your clothes because they all got lost in the fire.
Yeah.
I mean, I would check in with you every few weeks, and you were like, yeah, I'm still sleeping on someone's couch, and I don't have anything, and I can't get any help from State Farm. I mean, tell us about your experience with the fire and what happened since then.
It was pretty awful. I mean, I lost both homes, and I lost everything in the one home I was living in. So like everyone, I was scrambling. I thought I was going to live in Malibu because my son was going to school out there. And then I realized I couldn't get from Malibu to the west side. It was taking 2 hours. So I had to pivot and then go to the west side to look for something. And then I was late. And no one would rent to me with 2 small dogs and a 15-year-old son. And all of my real estate friends weren't so friendly anymore. And no one was giving me a place to live. I was on my son's couch, and I was in hotels in Palm Springs and Santa Barbara, and I mean, just all over. And then eventually, I remember I went to this new company and they said, we're going to hire you. And I made this great deal with them, and it was pouring rain. And I was in West Hollywood in in the new office. And I literally had to like go to a place to change for the meeting because I didn't have a home. Right before that, I found a house in West Hollywood that I dropped all of my stuff at the night before, and it's pouring rain, and I go there right before my meeting, and the roof's caved in, and there's literally rain pouring down in the house with all my stuff. And I called my older son. I'm like, this is surreal. I don't even know what to do. So I left the stuff. I went to the meeting. I got this new job, and I'm standing there kind of soaking wet, realizing that I didn't have a raincoat. You know, these things with the fire, you forget what you don't have, like little things. I'm like, oh no. So they go, where are you living? And I said, I don't know. I'm like living in my car. I'm in this place. I don't know what to do. And this one girl in the office, she said, hey, I have this house. I think they'll rent you in West Hollywood in the Bird Streets. Why don't you see it? I was like, sure, why not? I walk in and I didn't even walk. I'm like, fine, I'll take it. And it was twice as much as what it should be.
Mm.
And I just, I took it because I didn't have a choice. So it's been, it was furnished. I don't have any furniture. I still, just don't have much. It's just my clothes, and that's, where I've been. So it's been a lot of change, and, just kind of trying to stay positive and happy that the fires happened when they did and not in the middle of the night, because that would have been just horrendous. Everyone,
Mm.
it would have been a whole different story, and just grateful that, we're alive, and we're gonna, trying to be optimistic for my friends and my clients and my family, and talking to people like Rick Caruso, and Rick was real positive on the phone last week to me, and he's like, it's going to be better than ever before. And I feel real, positive that the park's coming back, and, the town's going to open, and I believe in the community, and I think that it will come back, but it's, not immediate. And that's kind of my story of where I'm at right now.
So before
And
we get in, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
and I lost a lot of listings, and I lost a lot of business, and I now am trying very hard to be one of the few agents to keep the prices up in the community. And I feel very strong about that. And I've turned down listings of people that have asked me to put their homes on the market for really discounted rates because they just wanted out. I don't believe in that, because then you just set the comp and you ruin for everyone. I think we have to stay strong as in a community, and I have been doing that. And the properties that I have listed are not severely discounted prices, and I'm really trying to stay true to that.
So I want to let the other guys jump in here because you mentioned optimism, and we had a conversation earlier today about whether we were optimistic or pessimistic, and I think sometimes it depends on the day. I feel optimistic in the long term, but I've discussed my own situation a little bit, and short-term optimism is not so high. But we'll talk about that. I mean, we're all facing tough decisions, but I mean, Ron and Oren, how are you guys feeling about that?
I have a question. Jacqueline, about what you just said, which is you're trying to keep the prices up. Why are you doing that? I mean, I guess that's the question. Is like, is there any not accepting listing? There's a lot of listings on the market. There's going to be more and more listings on the market. It seems like maybe it's like putting the finger in the dam. Like, isn't it at some point going to, the market is going to expose itself? There's X amounts of lots on the market. There's going to be a lot more. Why? I guess my question is like, why do that? Other than just, shouldn't the market clear as fast as possible?
I just feel that the one agent that goes there and sets that price, it's so comp sensitive that if you set that price so low, then boom, everything follows. So I really didn't want to do that. I believe in the area, and I know there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. I have a group of, for example, one developer, he has $100 million behind him in a fund, and he's wanting properties to buy and develop, and he's just sitting there like waiting till it hits the bottom. Well, what's the bottom? So I certainly don't want to be the one person that's going to set that bottom. And it probably will happen, but I certainly am, I'm not going to be the one to do it. Like, I have some properties now that are on the market, and they're quite high, and I'm fine with that. And that's where my stance is on this. But
What you're
maybe
saying,
I could get
what you're
that.
saying is the same thing that I'm hearing from a lot of developers as well, which is they're kind of like just waiting. They're on the sidelines. They're not
Yeah,
coming in, and they're going to wait until the market comes down, which I think it will. Uh, at least for lots, right? For land, right? Where it's a limited amount of people that can get in that market because it's not financeable really,
that's
unless it's
right.
hard money. So, okay. Uh, I
I
mean,
mean,
how many lots do you think will be right now? How many lots are on the market right now, and how many do you think will come on the market at
I
the
think
peak?
there's almost like 200 right now. There's like 3 to 4 a day. And right now, I have a lot of listings in all different pockets of the Palisades. And I'll tell you, the only area that I seem to have interest, and I do have some escrows, is the Huntington. That is the only area that seems to be where homeowners want to upgrade from the alphabet streets. And a lot of them have had, well, that's a different topic, is the insurance, but I'll get into that in a minute. But those people are wanting to come to the Huntington, and the builders are feeling secure about the Huntington. And I think it's because 60% of the Huntington didn't burn. So it doesn't feel as like overwhelming to rebuild that pocket, and the lots are bigger. So it doesn't feel as tight that you're surrounded by all of this, rebuild. But in the alphabet streets, I own a house there, the one I've had forever. And diving into a different topic, I wanted to possibly sell that initially, but I am one of the, at one time you'd say the lucky ones to have State Farm, because I wasn't dropped. I was so excited. I wish I was dropped in hindsight, because they're the worst. So now I'm fighting with State Farm, and if I sell the lot before I build, I lose like 1/3 of the money, insurance money that I get from State Farm. So as I'm arguing with State Farm as a full-time job, every day I get on the phone and I argue with State Farm, the lots go down in price, down in price, down in price. So I think that's the issue that I'm having with a lot of my clients, is that they're in this limbo stage. They'd like to sell, but they're going to lose so much money from their insurance carriers that they're trying to work it out with the insurance, but then simultaneously the values are plummeting. So it's a really tricky space to be in.
So just to your point on State Farm, I felt that we're lucky in the beginning as well that we have State Farm, and I am talking to a few of my friends already that got almost all their money from like in the beginning they didn't even get a call back from California Fair Plan. They didn't like nobody talked to them even. And by now, they almost got all their money from California Fair Plan. We got nice checks in the beginning, like pretty quick. We got probably 50% of the money in the first, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like 30 days or something like that. But since then, like we just sent our list of everything we had in the house. We came back way above, probably 3 times more of what our coverage was, and now we've been asked to add aging to each item. How the hell would I know? Like, when did I buy this T-shirt, or when did I buy whatever it is? And then they need receipts. I don't have receipts. Like, if you go to your bank, I just learned it today. If you go to your bank statement on Chase, you have probably a year and a half back. That's what you have. But like things that they bought like years ago, how can like I don't get it. How do they expect me to show these things? Like to show that I wear this shirt, or to show that like this sofa that I really had it, if I didn't have a picture of that specific area in my house, or that specific computer or something like that. So I started doing it today, and it's hours. I sat in front of it for like 5 minutes and don't know what to do. And again, John, maybe this is a question for you on like on the level of like the the federal Can somebody
Yeah.
help us with this? Because it's not just
Well,
a problem with us. I see the group, the State Farm group on WhatsApp is like boiling. Like everybody that has State Farm feel that they got screwed the worst. And we heard your stories from the beginning, and
yeah.
we, again, that our house is burned down, felt lucky, but it's not the situation.
Well, I think at some point we're going to have a guest from the Eaton fire in Pasadena or Altadena, because there was a great article in the LA Times about 10 days ago about how they got a group together to complain about State Farm. And they're very organized. They're more organized in that sense than we are. The people over there are really fighting State Farm. But, you mentioned the federal level. Rick Grinnell, who is the president's special envoy for special missions, he's been on the ground here in California. He's from California. He's doing a million other things, but in addition to that, he's trying to help in California. And we were able to push him a little bit, and he was able to push State Farm to raise the percentage that they would give people before requiring them to itemize their belongings. So the state minimum is 30%. State Farm was offering 50%, which sounds generous until you compare it to the other insurance companies, some of which are offering 70%, some of which are offering the entire thing without having to itemize. And State Farm has now, because of the meeting with Rick Grinnell, moved up to 65%. And that was hard to do. I think that was really difficult to get them to move because they're so exposed. And I think Rick Grinnell did a good job. There's a lot more to do, obviously. 65% isn't 100%. And I've had my own battles with State Farm. On that front, I had some good news last week for the first time last Friday that they're going to cover something which I've been trying to get them to cover. So that's amazing. So there's a little bit of progress, and I have a little bit more hope than I did. But it's important, and Jacqueline, this is why I think we really wanted to focus on this tonight. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but we're reaching a decision point where what we do with our house and our property could depend on whether the insurance comes through. And everybody's under financial stress for various different reasons. Some people are going to have less insurance money than they need to rebuild. Some people are going to struggle to carry the mortgage once their alternate living expense money runs out. So talk to us, if you could, about some of the decisions that people are making. Why are people deciding to sell? What are some of the factors that are going into that? I talked to someone today at school pickup who came up to me and said she loves our podcast, she listens to it, and she's decided to stay. And there are reasons people do that as well. It could be whether you have access to savings or income, or I don't know, but people are coming to a decision point. I think the next 3 to 6 months really could be crucial. And Ron and Oren have talked about the delays, the red tape, the debris removal problems. So what's going into some of these decisions, and what kind of decisions do you see people struggling with?
I feel like the people that are over 65 or 70, the older folks, they don't have the bandwidth for this. They're just going to sell. And interestingly is a lot of them don't want to sell. They don't want to rebuild and they don't want to sell. They're just going to keep the lots empty and maybe, and that's it. They're just going to keep them and pass them down to their relatives down the road. So I do think you're going to have a lot of just empty lots that aren't for sale, especially like in the alphabet streets and some of those areas where it's extra condensed. So I think that group is not really rebuilding. Then there's the group that have little kids, and those people, they kind of went out. They just want to start their lives somewhere else, and they're going to, I don't know, I have clients that went to Park City and down to Newport and, different areas, even Brentwood, Santa Monica. They just don't really want to come back. Then there's another group that's really concerned about the soils, and I don't know enough to comment about that and how, if the cleanup is going to be, and if it's going to be toxic down the road, and they seem to be worried to stay here. And then there's the other group, like I'm staying, I'm excited, I'm kind of looking forward, I'm going to rebuild a house exactly how I wanted it to, and I would have never been able to do this before if I hadn't had the help with some insurance money. So I'm kind of looking positively like that. All the people I sold new construction homes to, they're all rebuilding. They've all contacted their builders and they have their plans and they seem quite excited, and they're kind of the ones that are hoping things get done fast and they're coming back. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But I did go to this like community event at Clover Park where the Palisades people were there, and there's this sense that like you don't have this community, I don't think, anywhere, and everyone's scattered to different locations. And I feel like for the most part, people miss the Palisades and they miss the community. They want to come home. And, I'm kind of looking at it like a stock hold. If someone said, okay, it's a 5-year stock hold and you'll be fine in 5 years, and you just kind of have to somehow look at it that way. The issue is holding on. So that's another concern that I have on top of State Farm. People that have mortgages, like I have Bank of America, and they say they'll, hold the loan forbearance, I guess, for, I don't know, up to 8 months, but then they're going to give you a bill for all 8 months. So that's not helping anyone. So I got in an argument with them. And I said, how are you helping me? You're supposed to be my partner. And State Farm sends the insurance check to Bank of America as my partner because I have a loan. And then Bank of America holds it into a savings account, I guess, at 3%. Which I was telling Joel, I go, well, that's not fair. I could just go anywhere and get 4.2%. So you're my partner, and now you're profiting on my insurance money,
You're
and you're
getting
not.
3%, by the way. You're getting like great percentage. Most of people either don't get anything or maybe get
Really?
1.5%. Yes.
But I was like, principal. It's not a big amount, but I thought the principal.
No, you're
If you're
100% right. Yeah, it's
if
your
you're
money.
my
Why would they get
partner,
100%?
why are you doing that? And then if you're my partner on the rebuild, wouldn't you put that loan on the money that I owe on the back end until I'm back in my house? So what are they going to do? The banks are going to start foreclosing on people once people get these bills of hundreds of thousands of dollars because they've been just not really addressing it or thinking about it or thinking they'll be able to pay it. Then what? Then your partner's just sitting there getting ready to foreclose on you. So I fight with the bank. I'm fighting with State Farm. It's exhausting.
I don't think I think what'll end up happening is like, the forbearance will come to term. It might be 8 months, it might be a year. And I do think that there's an argument to be made for it to be just stuck on the loan, right? I think
That's
with
what they
enough
did at
pressure.
COVID, apparently. It's
Yeah.
on the back end of the loan,
Yeah, and I think that's
right?
with enough pressure, especially with the big lenders, I think that should manifest itself over the next year. I might be wrong, but I think B of A is a big enough
Yeah.
lender, Chase is a big enough lender where there's enough pressure. I think they will come to that point as well. They're just going to stick it on the end.
It's interesting. I mean, this might be outdated information, but about 6 weeks ago, when the state legislature was starting to discuss this, I got a hold of the office that was drafting it. I forget which member of the state legislature it was, but I said, "Oh, you guys are doing this bill that would require banks to offer forbearance for 12 months. That's great. Are you going to owe the mortgage at the end of 12 months? Are you going to have this big balloon payment?" And they knew that was a problem, but they hadn't really figured out what to do about it. And I said, "Well, why don't you put it on the back end? Just add it on to the end of the
Yeah.
mortgage." And they said, "Yeah, we're going to try to do that." But I got the sense that they hadn't figured it out legislatively, like how they were going to do that. That might have changed, but that's exactly the problem. I mean, how do you? In talking to my bank, I got the sense that this forbearance deal that they were trying to offer me, like we'll let you go into forbearance for like 6 months. This deal they were trying to offer me was basically almost like a preparation for sale, because why else would you sign on to something where you'd have to pay 6 months worth of your mortgage at the end of it if you weren't going to sell it and just have that money available to pay off what you missed? I mean, it almost like is a setup to sell. That's how I felt about it. So I didn't take it. I'm still paying my mortgage, but it is a challenge.
Yeah. So that to me is, not a great option.
So you got that decision point people are coming to. I'm also in a weird place because we refinanced at some point and we got an adjustable rate mortgage when things looked pretty good in terms of interest rates. And now they don't look so good. And we go up in about a year or so. And, we have to somehow get this house in a serviceable condition and refinance on some other way so that it'll be a higher interest rate, but it won't be like a massive interest rate that they could charge us with the adjustable rate. I mean, I have no idea how we're going to do it, but how do you advise people who are in that situation? What do you tell people who are trying to work through their mortgages and trying to figure this out if there's no state legislation or there's no policy from the banks to help people?
It's so tricky. I just think people are in a false state of feeling like everything's okay financially because people have gotten payments from insurance companies. So you're living off insurance money. A lot of people had policies where they're paying for rentals for a year. So then what happens when the rental ends? Well, I'm in that situation, and then I have to pay rent or mortgage of another place. And then I have two homes in the Palisades. I have to pay mortgages and property taxes. And the one was a rental property that was covering the other two. So now you don't have that. So then all of a sudden you're in a situation where you have two, three more payments, mortgage payments, property taxes, and you don't have the help from insurance anymore. So I think there's going to be a lot of problems soon with that. And I think you're going to get, people that have to sell, and they're going to sell cheap. And those are the people on the sidelines that are looking. Here's another topic, switching gears. All of these, a lot of the condo buildings in the Highlands and other of these buildings, they're like 36 units, 50 units. They all burn down, and that the HOAs don't have the money to rebuild the units. They just never thought of that, and the price is so high. So now they're all in talks, and they're trying to, quietly get together and they're probably going to have to sell the land and then get some kind of divide up the land price amongst the units, depending on, I guess, how big your unit was and the insurance money. But that's a big problem I see, and I never thought of that. And I sell lots of condos, and I never really looked to say, okay, if the whole complex goes to the ground, what's the insurance policy of the condo complex, and is it enough money to rebuild 50 units? And from what I've seen, and I can't disclose because it's private, there's a few that are not in good shape. And I have some, public companies that I'm talking to now that are looking to come and jump into the area and take over those big ventures, because the normal builders, it's just too big. But that's a big problem too. It's unfortunate.
What are you seeing, Jacqueline, in terms of rentals? I heard anecdotally that there's some folks that are moving in to the neighborhood despite everything because some of them are working in the area, Army Corps. Have you seen any activity in that realm?
I haven't really, but I am thinking that you know what, you will be able to rent things. I think maybe somewhat, I'm just guessing, 50 cents on the dollar of maybe what you would have gotten before, but there's going to have to be housing for all of these people, and all of the builders that are coming in. They're kind of like thinking now, well, we kind of need like office spaces. Maybe we should put an Airstream on one of the lots, or we're all going to be here. So I do think there will be kind of a rental market that's going to come. I think so. I haven't seen too much of it yet, but that's my thought. I mean, we got our first permit. I'm with the Thomas James house. It was a listing I had in the Alphabets on iLive, and it burned down. And we already have permits, and they did a big thing with the mayor and in the news like 2 weeks ago. I think there's like, I don't know, one of the first 10 permits that have been issued. So that was positive. And I think what's going to happen is once the lots are cleared and people feel a little safer going to the area, and you don't need a pass, and you don't have to come in and see the guns, and it feels very like scary and it just a little bit unsettling. I think once that all clears and people can go in freely and they see building and they see construction, I think at that point everyone's mindsets are going to be a little more at ease, and more investors will come in and things will start moving a little bit more. It's just my guess.
Do you think so? Because I think that once we'll start going in, let's say everybody's building, right? There is like 8,000 houses that need to be built. And I'm just thinking in my head all the time about these statistics. Let's say that we're champions. We'll be able to build like 5,000 houses, 6,000 houses in 5 years, okay? Let's say that we'll be able to do it. Let's assume. Again, it's not like an area like Altadena that you can bring one of these big builders and it's like it will be easier to build. Let's assume that we'll be able to build 6,000 houses. Are you going to move back into a neighborhood that they're building 2,000 houses in it? You know how many traffic of construction? You won't be able to move in this neighborhood. And I don't understand it. Like I hear a lot of people that are like very optimistic, and I want to be optimistic as well. I'm rebuilding. I'm not selling my lot. I'm rebuilding, I'm working on plans, every time after like having a design meeting, I'm getting excited and we're going to do this and that. It's
Yeah.
great. But I'm just thinking about it. 2,000 houses are going to get rebuilt start to get rebuilt in 5 years. How can we even, and Palisade streets are like narrow, are small. If there is more than one truck in a street, the street is closed for like, half of the day. I don't know. I really want to understand. Like, I think that the people I was telling the guys this earlier today. I think that the people that are saying, "Oh, great, prices are going up and it will be amazing," either has like something, that they need to show that business as usual because they're making money out of it, and they have like land over there, or they have like stores, and they want to be optimistic. One. Or the other option is that they have no clue what they're talking about. I want to see some statistics of somebody that explaining me in 5 years we did great. We did 6,000 houses. There is 2,000 houses more that need to be rebuilt. How much traffic we will have from 2,000 houses that need to be rebuilt? Did anybody even think about it?
I agree with what you're saying. I think honestly, there's going to be certain pockets in the Palisades that are going to be a lot easier to live in than others, just
Right.
based upon, there's some pockets actually that didn't burn, oddly enough. Like I have this big listing on Alcima, a lot listing. It was a $24 million house and it burned down. And I have the lot listing now, and only there's one house next to it that burned. But the rest of it, the 90% of the community's there, the houses are there, people are living there. So that particular pocket won't be as affected like what you're saying. I think the Huntington will kind of get built within a couple years and you won't have that. The Alphabet Streets worries me because it's just, I think it's going to be great, but I agree with you. It's going to be rough to be living in the heart of the Alphabet Streets right away. I mean, my house is on the outskirts of the Alphabets by Sunset, and it was always a bad thing in a way. I was like, oh, I'm not in the prime lot in Alphabet Streets. And now I have a different way of thinking. I'm like, actually, it's kind of good. I'm like right there by Sunset, and I'm not in the middle of all of that. And I think it's going to be better. So, eventually it will turn again. But I hear what you're saying. There's certain pockets that, like Sunset Mesa, got totally wiped out. That's tricky. And your area, Joel, isn't quite as bad, I don't think, where you are, because your house is saved and there were some other homes in the area that were saved.
Yeah, I think we are in a good position just in our corner. My house and the six next to it are still standing, but most of the Marquez Nolles did burn. And, you're mentioning different opportunities for developers and things like that. I just want to read this because I find it interesting, but the Marquez Nolles area was almost a golf course once. That, yeah, they put up all these homes in the mid 20th century, and the Lockman family, Lockman, of course, is the big road that goes all the way up the hill. But the Lockman family were very involved in real estate, and they helped build a lot of these homes. And they built the Huntley in Santa Monica. They were very into real estate all over LA, and they wanted to build a golf course at the top of Marquez. I don't know where the top is. Maybe that's beyond the school. I'm not exactly what that describes, but maybe it's just the upper part of the neighborhood. And the LA Planning Commission vetoed it, so they never got to build their golf course. But listen to this. This is from the Palisadian Post about 20 years ago, 2003. They wrote, a combination of the late 70s recession coupled with a devastating fire that hit Marquez Nolles in 1978 put the family on hard times. So we had a fire almost 50 years ago, and that really wiped out the family in a sense. So the Lockman family was very involved in all this real estate, and eventually they had to sell off most of their real estate holdings because of a fire in 1978. And I hope it's not a golf course, but it is going to be hard to develop some of these areas. I mean, what you mentioned about the condos in Highlands is really getting my mind going, because how do you build there? It's really, really hard. And I am worried about big developers coming in. Let me ask you another question also. People worry about the high-end developers and that kind of thing. What about affordable housing? I mean, are people going to come in and say, well, we've got to have a high-rise here for lower-income families? There's that family that owned the Shell station that wants to put up an 8-story high-rise in the middle of town, and they want it to be for low-income people. And I think that's their way of basically getting money from the government. But I mean, is that something that could happen, and is that factoring into your analysis of what people are deciding to do?
I don't know. I don't have much to comment about that. I haven't followed that quite as much, but I will say that I have had quite a few module home builders reach out to me. And I had one group, I'm going to go see his stuff in North Hollywood. I thought it was interesting. And he was saying that you could buy for a pretty reasonable price these module homes. He sent me a picture. They looked pretty nice, actually, compared to what you would see. And you could put a number of them on one lot. So he was saying you could take 2 of them and make them into a duplex, and then depending on the size of your lot, and then put like another in the back. And I'm not sure what the zoning is on that and how you would do that. But there are quite a few people that are looking for, cheaper alternatives in this module home thing. I haven't seen them.
I don't think it's the cheaper angle. It's the faster angle. Also, it could be cheaper as well. But I think it's cheaper because of like the way that the Palisades is built. It's just easier to get in and out. It's much easier to manufacture something off site and then bring it in rather than deal with the logistics of the Palisades. And so I'm looking at modular as very, very seriously. Are? Yes. And so is Oren. Because it can be really save a lot of time and money. And we've done a lot of due diligence, like looking at a lot of different options. We'll probably talk about it on future episodes. So I think that's a great solution actually for our problem. You mentioned that, like what I'm hearing from I guess like from this conversation that we're having today is that like people are just trying to waiting out. Everybody's waiting everybody out, right? It's like the developers are waiting out the people that want to sell the homes, and the people that are selling out the homes are waiting out the developers, and the people are going to wait for 5 years until everything happens, and the condo owners are going to wait for the insurance, and then something's going to happen around that. And all I'm really hearing around is it's going to take a long time for all of this to develop and happen, and even the overhang of like the properties over the years that you mentioned, like some people are not going to sell at all. There'll probably be empty lots on your street that somebody, a senior citizen may own and may want to give to his kids, but they're just going to sit there. But that's another overhang of properties that's going to sit there for many years. And so, back to Oren's point, I think all of this is going to take longer than the optimistic predictions.
Maybe the city should make a mandate. You can't have empty lots that are fenced off. Any empty lot can be a dog park or a park for everyone. I mean, I would be nice to have empty lots, but you don't want them if they're like all fenced off and you have all of these like awful lots.
And Joel, to your point, I'm not scared about the high-end developers coming in. I think that would be a good thing. I'm more worried about the other end of the market coming in. About the future of the Palisades. That's where I would be worried as a homeowner or a property owner in the Palisades.
Well, when Steve Soberof was still the chief recovery officer, I would talk to him once in a while, and I actually invited him on the show, but I think he got so burned by all the public controversies that he just decided not to come on. But one of my neighbors said that there was this fight, between Steve Soberof and Rick Caruso, even though they were getting along in public. Caruso said, we don't want this affordable housing stuff in the Palisades. And Soberof was like, well, you're going to have it because it's state law and you got to get with the times and this is what we got to do. And one of my neighbors said, she doesn't want to live in a housing project, which was her version of Steve Soberof's vision. And she doesn't want to live in Disneyland, which is her version of Rick Caruso's vision. She just wanted it the way it used to be, where it was different kinds of homes. And, I think that's how people still want it to be. They liked the diversity of homes. In our neighborhood in Marquez Nolles, there were still a few of those early 50s homes that had not changed. But then there were some very nice large homes. People had knocked down those old homes or they had built on top of them. My house is sort of a hodgepodge of additions to the original 1950s structure. And I mean, we said, Jacqueline, when we met you, that we were going to figure out a way to stay in Santa Monica or on the west side of LA. We were going to hang on by our fingernails. And the problem is we're still hanging on by our fingernails, especially with this happening. You know, when we had some opportunities come up in terms of jobs, we were thinking, well, maybe we should rent out the house. This is before the fire. Do you know what day it was, Jacqueline? I actually went back and looked at the text messages that you and I were sending to each other about, well, what would it get on the rental market? It was January 6th.
Oh,
It was the day before the fire.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard because we are. I don't think I've ever felt as connected to the community as I do right now. I mean, I've always loved the Palisades, but especially now with the podcast and with everything that's happened, everybody's very close. The baseball league, and I mean, everything is amazing. And yet we're at these decision points where, and I know I'm not the only person because we talk about it all the time with other families, where the financial strains are going to start to become incredible unless we start to see things move. I mean, my idea is to change things. I think, Ron, you mentioned this on the federal level, get the federal government involved, try to get them involved in getting the rebuilding going faster or extending FHA loans to people so they can rebuild faster. You know, get zero interest loans. Ron, we were talking about this, weren't we? Like getting out these zero interest loans to make up the difference between insurance and construction costs. People will repay those loans. They just need to rebuild. And if they can't rebuild, they're going to abandon lots that they really could afford to rebuild on if they just had the wherewithal to do it. I mean,
I think a lot of the programs are actually already in place. I've looked into this. The problem is that they're not made for places like the Palisades. Like, there's special mortgages you could go. Like, if you lost a house in Oklahoma City, not to pick on Oklahoma City, but like if you could get a special mortgage to buy another house in Oklahoma City for like a very favorable rate at you know, with very low credit requirements and knowing that your house is in forbearance. The issue is nobody made a plan for losing like $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million homes and above, right? That's the issue. So the programs exist; they just don't exist for this neighborhood. So that's what, you know, like that's what they need to look at. And I agree that on a large scale, that's the only thing that's going to really help, because everybody's going to have their insurance battles. I don't see insurance companies changing their, you know, their kind of like doctrine overnight. It's gonna take a long time. I don't think like State Farm is unique. There's a lot of people struggling with their insurance. I think that the only thing that's going to help is some kind of like, you know, somebody over the top coming in, offering like, you know, mortgage relief, offering alternative funding, offering interest-free loans, like you said. So yeah, like on a wider level, yes, that's I believe that's what's needed.
Jacqueline, what are you seeing from people on the outside when they talk about the future of the Palisades? I mean, you have developers interested in coming in. What is their vision for how it looks?
Most of the developers I work with are not putting their money in the Palisades right now. They're trying to help rebuild homes for people that have lost homes, and their investments are anywhere but the Palisades. And they're waiting because they don't think we've hit the low. So I'm struggling to trying to get people to come in, and I'm constantly having calls. And it's interesting because it's not only developers that I know. I'm getting a lot of calls from just outside people that have heard about the Palisades and they think it's a good investment and they want to come in. And then they come in and they look at it and they're like this. Like, you can't even imagine when you see the pictures, as you know, online of the Palisades compared to when you actually drive through and you feel it and you see what it is, it's completely different. And then they become paralyzed and they really can't make a decision. And then they say, we're just thinking, and then nothing happens. So it's this just, and I keep saying the word patience because I think that's all that you can do. I don't know what else you can do, but it's definitely, you know, not easy at all. It's terrible. You guys have been great though. I will say thank you for having me on the show, and all of my clients and everyone I know in the Palisades, they're always sending me, your podcast. And I'm like, that's Joel, that's my friend. And you've really been so helpful by doing this and giving people like the sense of like hearing other people talk and just the conversation, and it just makes people feel so good. So it's been amazing that you guys put this together, and it's very well received.
Well, thanks to Oren and Ron who roped me into it. But I think also, so many people spent so many hours on Zoom meetings where you're given information, and a lot of the information is repeated, and some of it is just outdated the next day, or it doesn't move anywhere. And I think people, they still watch and listen to the podcast, so they're not necessarily active participants in our podcast. But the three of us will sit here and argue over things, and I think we have very real conversations. We're all displaced. I'm sitting at the kitchen table here, or the dining table in a home that's not my own, and we're all living in the same situation, and it's just we're talking it through.
I think the information, it's been rapidly changing, and it's going to continue doing that. It's like, we're making real-time decisions with our family, the schools, where to live, where to rent, where everything is happening at the same time. And so, everything is going to continue to happen, maybe at a little slower pace now that we're just out of the first 100 days. But I think again, it's just based on real-time information. I think a lot remains to be seen. Are the roads going to be open? Is PCH going to be accessible? How do you get through? How do you even stay around the area with all these roads closures? I think again, it's all real time. We're trying to make decisions in real time, and those are going to continue being very dynamic, kind of facts that we have to make these decisions around. So that's why it's nice to talk it out in this forum, because the facts change every week.
You know what I said to my son this last weekend? They had their last baseball practice for PPBA, for the Pacific Palisades Baseball Association, before the playoffs start. And first of all, I think Bob Benton and the team have done an incredible job in organizing the season with the Cheviot Hills Recreation Center, who've been amazing at hosting us. I mean, it's been amazing to keep this league together. It's the only place that these kids and these families can still see each other. And you mentioned, Jacqueline, that there was that great festival. Anthony Margulies, who was on the show, he helped organize that. But the baseball has been incredible. And in the last regular season game, my son's team, who are the Palisades Dodgers in the Mustang division, they played the Palisades Orioles. And my son plays catcher, and the first batter from the other team was our neighbor. We didn't know it was going to happen. And the little boy, basically, 9 or 10-year-old boy who lives on the next street, or lived on the next street, and has since relocated about an hour away. This is their only contact they've had. They were at each other's houses, every day, just every day for 2 years or whatever. And my son and the batter saw each other, and my son got up from his crouch behind home plate, and the two of them just hugged. Aww. And then the game started. And at the practice that followed, my son's team lost the game, and they were trying to pull it all together in practice. And my son was very frustrated. He felt like he hadn't done very well in the game. He walked on base at one point, but he lined out to the pitcher when the bases were loaded. He got very frustrated with himself. And I said to him, you know what? I don't think there's a Little League team in history that has had to put up with and go through what you guys have gone through. I can't think of any Little League. There are tragedies that happen in communities, but they usually don't happen to the entire community at once. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any Little League Baseball association that has done what you guys have done. And you are actually the leaders of the community. The kids are leading the community. Obviously, the parents and the organizers and the officials and everybody is putting it together for them. But I said, every time you step on that baseball field, you're leading this community. So whether you play well or you don't play well, you're holding everybody together. And, that makes me want to continue being part of this community. And so I think people feel that way. And we're going to hang on by our fingernails and try to do it. And the forces against us are pretty staggering. But, that's where I think this comes from, that sense of community that's so elusive everywhere else in this country, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know Ron. Oren and I have known each other for years because we were in Santa Monica together, and he moved out here before I did, or he moved to the Palisades
No,
before I did.
we moved. I think, Joel, we actually moved right like in the same month or something. You guys moved in 2019,
Yeah, November 2019.
so we moved on June.
Yeah, okay. So I knew you were here
July.
before me. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right before you guys.
You know, I mean, Jacqueline, how do people outside, when you talk to these investors, do they understand the community? I mean, do they have a sense of the people living there? Because it's crazy to think that there's this asset that people want and we're sitting on it, and yet we might lose it, or we might not be benefiting from it in the not too distant future.
I mean, it's a mix. It's the old timers that have been there that, Thomas James is putting these forums together and trying to build as much as they can. And another group I worked with, Shelter Homes, they've got a whole bunch of homes, and everyone used to fight for one lot. And now I'm like, look, the more the merrier. As many as you can take to everyone I know, I'm happy about, because the faster we can get things going, the better. And that's why even outside groups that are coming in, I'm just happy because I just want to get this thing moving. But there are, I'd say like 50% of new builders that are kind of scouring around and looking and kind of seeing what there is to buy. But it's a little slow. There are some things selling, and then it just takes a few, and then it rolls into others because they kind of all know each other to a certain degree. Oh, well, this one sold for this, and he's building. Oh, well, if he's building that, then that should be good. You just need to get as many people, like you were saying. There's so many to build, or like, how are you going to do it? So
I think another issue that could, that if I was to look at it like from a way the market could be like unlocked and for things to move faster. I don't think it's going to happen, but because there's so many lots that are burnt and they're available for sale, the reason that the lots are not going to get bought up is because they're not financeable. You have to get a hard money loan to get a lot. Like a bank will not give you a mortgage on a lot.
Yeah, that's
right?
why it's tricky.
That's why it's tricky.
Yeah.
So,
you need a lot of money.
Exactly. So, but if you were able to get a mortgage on a lot, like let's just say it worked like a house, I think a lot more locals would actually buy other lots. Maybe they'll rent out their own, or maybe they'll sell their own. But I think the market would move a lot faster rather than wait for those outside developers to finally see the bottom and then come in, which they will, but just not yet.
That's an interesting point that I didn't say. I am seeing that too. A lot of families that want to stay together. So they're looking to combine lots and to build houses next to each other. And there are a lot of local families looking to expand and reposition so that they could have like family compounds, which I think is pretty neat. So I am seeing that.
So, but Jacqueline or Ron or Oren, if you want to jump in, I mean, is that the solution then? I mean, we're talking about regulatory changes or funding that might change the situation, but is the answer to somehow create financing for lots and then have these lots move at least? And I think, Jacqueline, I also wanted to just ask you to clarify, a lot of people think that selling is bad, that if people sell and leave the community, that's bad. But what you're saying is selling is good because when there's turnover, there's investment. When there's investment, there's rebuilding, there's life. And, 100% of the lots aren't going to be sold. But having some kind of market gets people back into the community. And I don't know, Ron, I mean, is that what has to happen? Is there some change?
I think if I was to be given the metric of rebuild the community faster, that would be one of the things I would do. I would unlock land sales by making them financeable. Right now, I mean, I should be more, more to the point. Lands are financeable, except that they're only financeable with hard money loans, not like mortgage. If you go to your Chase or B of A, they're not going to finance your land buy. Even if you wanted to buy your land, let's say it was $1.5 million to $1.8 million, and a burnt out lot, but with a standing home is $3 million. They're going to finance the $3 million home, but they won't finance the $1.5 million to $1.8 million home. It's just not something that they do unless you go hard money. So my metric was let's rebuild the community faster because there's 1,500 to 2,000 lots that are going to be on sale, I would say let's unlock that. And that would be one of the things that I think would get things moving. Because right now, I think those lots are going to accumulate on the market. Jacqueline, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's X amount of lots on right now. There'll probably be 4X, 5X as many in the next year or two. And until those lots clear the market, the community is not going to be fully rebuilt. So, going back to my original point, if my metric was rebuild the community faster, I would definitely offer something in the land loans realm, because I think you'd find a lot of the members of the community would actually reposition themselves into a different lot. Something I'm even, me and some other people that I know, it's like I may have a better lot in mind that would be in the Palisades in Malibu still. Maybe I would trade my lot for that one. So it would just get the activity going. Right now,
or even share the lot next to you. I'm finding with your neighbor, and you can have more space. Like in the Alphabet Streets, if you split the one next to you, it'd be cheaper. You pay for half of it, and you kind of can get your lot to be like a 9,000 square foot lot. I mean, that's kind of a nice possibility. But again, you need the cash, so that's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a problem we're going to solve on this episode, but we will try to keep going. And Jacqueline, I want to just thank you again for appearing with us, and thank the guys again for all that they do. And this is a lot of fun to do this podcast, and the feedback has been incredible. So you can get all of our episodes at 3homelessguys.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the RSS feed and all of that. And we love feedback. Pod at 3homelessguys.com. Feedback and ideas, suggestions for guests. And until next time, from Oren, Ron, and myself, stay strong.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Three Homeless Guys. If this episode hit home, please subscribe to our channel. Check out 3homelessguys.com for RSS feeds to your favorite streaming service. Follow us on social and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Drop us a review or shoot us a message at pod@3homelessguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Stay strong, and we'll catch you next time.